On that day, Röhm, the chief of staff of the SA since 1931, was murdered by Hitler's orders, and the old guard of the SA was massacred without trial and without warning. The opportunity was taken to murder a large number of people who at one time or another had opposed Hitler. The ostensible ground for the murder of Röhm was that he was plotting to overthrow Hitler, and the defendant Göring gave evidence that knowledge of such a plot had come to his ears. Whether this was so or not is not necessary to determine. On July the 3rd, the cabinet approved Hitler's action and described it as legitimate self-defense by the state. Shortly afterwards, Hindenburg died, and Hitler became both Reich and President and Chancellor at the Nazi-dominated plebiscite, which followed. 38 million Germans expressed their approval, and with the Reichswehr taking the oath of allegiance from the Führer, full power was now in Hitler's hands. Germany had accepted the dictatorship with all its methods of terrors and cynical and open denial of the rule of law. Apart from the policy of crushing the potential opponents of their regime, the Nazi government took active steps to increase its power over the German population. In the field of education, everything was done to ensure that the youth of Germany was brought up in the atmosphere of National Socialism and accepted National Socialist teachings. As early as the 7th April 1933, the law reorganizing the civil service had made it possible for the Nazi government to remove all subversive and unreliable teachers, and this was followed by numerous other measures to make sure that the schools were staffed by teachers who could be trusted to teach their pupils the full meaning of National Socialist creed. Apart from the influence of National Socialist teaching in the schools, the Hitler Youth Organization was also relied upon by the Nazi leaders for obtaining fanatical support from the younger generation. The defendant, von Schirach, who had been Reich youth leader in the NSDAP since 1931, was appointed youth leader of the German Reich in June 1933. Soon all the youth organizations had been either dissolved or absorbed by the Hitler Youth, with the exception of the Catholic Youth. The Hitler Youth was organized on strict military lines, and as early as 1933, the Wehrmacht was cooperating in providing pre-military training for the Reich Youth. The Nazi government endeavored to unite the nation in support of their policies through the extensive use of propaganda. A number of agencies were set up whose duty it was to control and influence the press, radio, films, publishing firms, etc. in Germany, and to supervise entertainment and cultural and artistic activities. All these agencies came under Goebbels' Ministry of the People's Enlightenment and Propaganda, which together with the corresponding organization in the NSDAP and the Reich Chamber of Culture was ultimately responsible for exercising this supervision. The defendant Rosenberg played a leading part in disseminating the National Socialist doctrines on behalf of the party, and the defendant Fritzsche, in conjunction with Goebbels, performed the same task for the state. The greatest emphasis was laid on the supreme mission of the German people to lead and dominate by virtue of their Nordic blood and racial purity, and the ground was thus being prepared for the acceptance of the idea of the German world supremacy.